Every man and woman in the city could agree that Evelyn was gorgeous, but what they didn't know about this Black Widow was that she was a cold-blooded killer and would go on to earn the title, the Torso Killer. Ruthless Black Widow Murderers number 4. Today we are going to be talking about Evelyn Dick. Evelyn was born on the 13th of October 1920 to Donald and Alexander McLean in Beamsville, Ontario. A year later, her family moved to Hamilton, where her father worked as a conductor at the Hamilton Street Railway. Emily did not have such a happy childhood growing up, as her father was always drunk, he drank too much, and her mom had a really bad temper, which means at home she was not getting most of the parental love and attention and affection that a child would need. And outside, she wasn't getting that from her friends either, because her parents would not let her play with the other kids around. And their reason for that was that she was kind of too good for them, or she was fragile and they didn't want her playing around with the other kids. At his job, Evelyn's dad had access to the company's coffers, and he kind of got some extra money for his family, and so they lived a really lavish lifestyle. They had a lot of money in the bank always, and they were well taken care of. They also gave Evelyn a handful of nickels, which was a lot of money at the time, to go shopping. So she had money at her disposal growing up at all times. Evelyn started at a public school before her parents removed her from that and sent her to a really prestigious, expensive high school where just the elites of the city, their kids went to such a school. And as time went on, Evelyn grew up to become a teenager and was one pretty teenager. And her mom taught her to harness the beauty, use all of that beauty, and use that to get a lot of money and jewelry and just nice stuff from boys and men, which probably worked because she went to a very expensive school. Following her mom's advice, she used her good looks to get men and boys to buy her jewelry and expensive clothes. With these beautiful things came along the rumors where people called her an escort, because she was mostly seen with wealthy men from that city, and she was often traveling with them or going out for expensive dinners with them. Over time, Evelyn threw extravagant parties at hotels, trying to be recognized by the higher ups in the Hamilton society, but they always just looked at her like someone who is getting all the money she has from being with older men. In 1942, Evelyn gave birth to a daughter. This time she was 22 years old, and she mostly left her daughter with her mother, Alexander. And she told everyone that she was married to a military man and he was stationed overseas, and he's the father of the baby. By 1944, Evelyn had been pregnant twice. The first time she gave birth to the child, but the child was stillborn, and the second time she did not bring the child home because she claimed that she had given the child up for adoption because her dad did not want another child in the house, with still claiming her mysterious husband stationed overseas, even though no one ever got proof that this guy ever existed. Donald and Alexander ended up having a separation, so now Evelyn lived with her mom, Alexander, and her daughter, and just 3 of them lived in the house. And in September of 1945, Evelyn just came home one day to her mom, telling her that she was going to be getting married to a man in 2 weeks called John Dick. Obviously, Evelyn's mom was crazy, and she was definitely against the marriage. Who is this new guy you've just met, and it's just 2 weeks and you want to get married to him? What about the other guys you've been dating, and all the questions? But Evelyn was like, she's going to be marrying this guy in 2 weeks. John Dick was a 39-year-old Russian immigrant who lived in the Hamiltons, and he worked as a streetcar driver, exactly where Evelyn's dad used to work. Given that he was older, Evelyn expected that he would have a lot of money and she would just kind of live off of him by the time they are married, but she was sorely mistaken. Her explanation as to why she had Heather was that she was a widow of a Canadian guy who had died in World War II. This Mr. White, the military guy she had been claiming to be married to. That's what she told Dick, and she said he had died, so she was his widow. Well, her mom could not stop her, so on October 4th, 1945, the two got married, and that's when reality struck, and Emily realized that Dick was not as well off as she thought he would be. When reality struck and Evelyn realized that her husband was not as rich as she thought, she went back to her older boyfriends, especially this guy called Bill and the others. Dick still tried to make the marriage work, and after a month of being married, he and Emily decided to move into a house that Emily had bought. So they moved in together and tried for about 3 months to make it work. But she was literally just being single while married to him and had all of his other boyfriends, and he had just had enough after 3 months. So he moved out and lived with his cousin. Having broken up, Dick went to Evelyn's father to try and get him to convince his daughter to kind of stop cheating on him, which saying it now sounds a little weird, to go to the father of your spouse to tell them to tell their daughter to stop cheating on you. It's just never going to work. But yeah, he did that, and Donald was like, well, I left with the mom and everything, and I'm not getting involved into this. And so Dick threatened to say, hey, I know you've been stealing from the company's coffers, and I'm going to tell on you and turn you into the police, because when their marriage and their love or whatever was still good and sweet, Evelyn had let that secret slip to Dick, that the father was stealing money from the company, and that's why they were rich. So obviously John got pissed and threatened to kill Dick, to which he told the police, hey, this guy is stealing and he's threatening to kill me if I kind of tell you guys about him stealing. So he reported that to the police, and on Saturday, March 6th, some 5 kids were just playing around, and when they went home, they reported to their mom they had seen a headless pig lying around in the woods. And when the police went there to investigate, it turns out John Dick was not a pig, it was just the torso of his body. Well, the torso they found, the police said the head, arms, and legs were missing, and it seemed like someone had actually tried to cut the torso into 2. So I don't know if they were planning to use him literally as a pig or for meat or something. Since the news of this headless torso spread, Alexander Camara was John's cousin, and he had reported him missing because he hadn't seen him for about 10 days, and he was not sure if he had gone back to the house where he lived with his former wife, Evelyn. He just didn't know where his cousin was because he had last seen him on the 6th and the body was found on the 16th. So given that the most recent thing in John's life is his marriage that had failed, the police went straight to Evelyn's house and they were like, hey, come in, we have to question you. And her first response to them was like, hey, don't look at me, I have no idea what happened to him. So when Evelyn was questioned, this was her response to the police. She told them that a well-dressed Italian guy from the mob had barged to their house and was like, hey, I'm the mob and I'm kind of looking for John because he had slept with my wife and gotten her pregnant. So she's trying to prepare the police's mind to feel like, hey, he had done something wrong and he was going to get something coming to him. But while investigating, the police found that there was a car that Evelyn had borrowed from a guy named Landek, and she had returned it to him bloody. So the guy said when she returned to the car, there was blood all over the car seats and there was a lot of blood in it and a pile of bloody clothes in the boot. And she had left a note explaining to him the blood by saying that her daughter, who was about 3 years old at this point, had hurt herself. She just cut herself, and that explains all of the blood that was in the car. Well, first off, the child is really small. If she loses that amount of blood, she won't be alive. And second, well, the blood type was type O, which strangely happens to be John's blood type. Well, Evelyn also had an explanation for that. So she told the police that, well, that her Italian mob guy had later called her and was like, can you bring me a car? I kind of found your husband and I'm going to kill him, so just bring me a car. And that explains how John's blood got into this car. She was literally so serious about it that she told the police that when she arrived with the car, the man had a big bag with him and he told her it was John's body in it. And well, I guess she said, yeah, put it in the car, and she drove around explaining to the police like she can't believe this happened, and yeah, this is where she drove and this is where she dumped the body, explaining everything to the police. So at this time, police were looking at Evelyn as the main suspect in the entire case because everything here is centered around her. And so to take the attention off herself, she decided to implicate her best boyfriend, Bill. And she said Bill was the guy who hired the Italian mob guy who came to her, and she knows where John was shot, and so she took the police to where John was shot, and that was her second statement. So she was shifting the attention now to Bill. During this time when she was taking the police to where John had been shot in the head before it was cut off and the rest of the parts, the police were also searching Evelyn's house to try and like build a case or find something there. And trigger warning, guys, it's about to get worse. We're going to be talking a little bit about a loss of a child, so someone who cannot deal with this, I just wanted to leave this trigger warning outside because it was actually really horribly done. So in the attic of Evelyn's parents' house, they found a suitcase, in an enclosed suitcase that was enclosed with concrete, and there was the body of an infant child in that. And this child turned out to be her second baby that she had, that she told police, that she told everyone that her father did not want another baby in the house, so she had given him up for adoption. The son she got, yeah, he was in the attic all this while. They found some bone fragments that had been charred. They found some uniforms, some bloody shoes and clothes, and they also found bullet holes, which all the uniform and stuff proved to belong to John. So this time Evelyn changed her statement for the third time, and she told police that, okay, fine, I'm gonna tell you the truth. You know, it's actually Bill who had killed Peter, her baby, 2 years ago, and it's also Bill who killed John this time. All of these testimonies and everything she has been mumbling around got Evelyn Dake, Bill, and her dad. They were all charged with the murder of John, and Evelyn and Bill were charged with infanticide for killing the baby, and Donald, her dad, was charged with theft of thousands of dollars from the company. Well, Alexandra, the mom, she decided to, well, share out testimonies to get herself immunity. So she told the police that her husband Donald did have a gun, which is the same one that was used to kill John, and a couple of days prior she had seen him kneeling down over a trunk in the attic, and she was not exactly sure what to do. When she just saw him, he screamed at her that she should leave, and that's exactly what she did. So she had no idea about the child being there. So against her daughter Evelyn, Alexandra testified that on March 6th, which was the last day anyone ever saw John alive, John was ordering some lunch for himself, and Alexandra said Evelyn had been out for most of the day, and on the 8th she had just told her that John would not be coming back. During the trial, everyone was like crazy and they wanted to see Evelyn because they know her for her parties and this fine looking lady who is very classy and everything. No one could imagine that a lady that's all of that could kill her child and her husband. During the trial, Evelyn was first found guilty and just sentenced to like death by hanging, and her lawyer came back to say like some of the evidence was not properly inputted by the police, so they kind of had to do it over. And this is when he brought a psychiatrist to evaluate Evelyn, and the psychiatrist said her mind was still kind of trapped in the mind of a 13-year-old, which sort of makes sense. Aside from the fact that she still is a black widow, it still makes sense because she did not really get the chance to be a child, and by the time she was a teenager, she just went into escort service. That brought her some leeway though, because she was only found guilty for the death of Peter, her son, and she was sentenced to life in prison, and Evelyn refused to testify against Bill. Maybe she actually loved this one, and so Bill left with no charges and everything because she had dragged him into this. I don't know if he actually killed John, but actually no one knows who killed John because she was only found guilty for the murder of her child. Bill went free, and her dad was found guilty for the robbery. He had to spend 5 years for that, and accessory to the death of Peter, another 5 years for that. So even though they had the body, they had all of these stories surrounding it and all of this fishy stuff. They had the clothes in their attic, they had the blood and everything. No one went down for the murder of John Dick. Well, in total, Evelyn spent 11 of those life sentences. Yeah, she spent 11 years in jail, and after that she was found to be a model citizen. It seems like being pretty actually helps. What do you guys think about pretty privilege? Do you think it helps a lot? But yeah, it totally worked for Evelyn in this case, and she was paroled, she got a new name, and went on to live her life happily ever after. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was the story of Evelyn Dick, and it was one hell of a tale. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Be the best version of yourself, and check out this playlist for all of our serial killer cases, and the other playlist for the full list of ruthless Black Widow murders. And see you tomorrow with another video just like this.